Hello, my name is Laura Hamilton, and I've been doing some genealogical research over the last few years, and I discovered a branch of my family that I didn't even know existed before. It's a pretty interesting story of my great-great-grandfather and his older brother. This branch of the family had rags to riches, rise, drama, married heiresses, movie stars, and it's pretty fascinating, I thought. So I wanted to share it in the form of a video. I've also met some long-lost cousins from this branch of the family, and it's been great to expand the family circle. So without further ado, here is the story of the John Taylor Hamiltons. Enjoy! My fourth great-grandfather, Alexander Wilson Hamilton, was Scotch-Irish. The Hamiltons were originally a lowland Scottish clan close to the royal family, but many of them went to Northern Ireland. Wealthy Hamiltons were given land in Northern Ireland by James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland. These landowner Hamiltons brought over relatives and tenant farmers to help settle their plantations. It wasn't like they were coming from that far away. Hamiltons in Scotland were concentrated in areas like Paisley and the Isle of Arran, and it was just a short trip across the North Channel of the Irish Sea to get to Northern Ireland, where they ended up in places like Strabane. Guess who didn't like the Scottish Hamiltons coming to Ireland and taking over their land? The native Irish, that's who. The Irish bitterly fought being colonized by the hated English and their Scottish supporters. Life in Northern Ireland under English rule was marked by famine, poverty, and violence. The Irish War of 1641 to 1652 was fought by Catholic against Protestant, Royalist against Parliamentarian, English and Scottish against Irish, and Irish against Irish. 1/3 of the population died during this period. It was brutal. The U.S. seemed like it could provide an easier life. Having left Scotland for Ireland, the Hamiltons now left Ireland for the United States. The U.S. East Coast was already full of English and German immigrants. The Scotch-Irish wanted their own communities and pushed west. Alexander Wilson Hamilton came over in about 1796 from Strabane, settled in Pennsylvania, and married Elizabeth Steele from an Irish family. After Elizabeth Steele's death, Alexander moved his family west again, this time to Geneseo, Illinois. This is their son, James Steele Hamilton. He was born in 1812 in an Irish town, in other words, an Irish ghetto, in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. Here's James Steele Hamilton on the family tree. His oldest son was John Taylor Hamilton. John Taylor was extremely successful. More about him in a bit. James Steele Hamilton's youngest son, the baby of the family, was James Woodbury Hamilton, my second great-grandfather. He's not a bad-looking guy for the 1880s. There were two other brothers, Porter Hamilton, shown here, and William Wallace Hamilton, named after the Scottish hero, and one sister, Sarah. She stayed home, married a farmer, and never left Geneseo. James and Mary gave their boys a solid education. John Taylor Hamilton didn't want to be a farmer like his dad. He was interested in business. He started off selling fire insurance in Geneseo, then moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa to represent a Chicago Reaper Company. The Reaper Company went out of business, so John T. started up his own farm supply company with a friend from Geneseo. The business was very successful. Eventually, John T.'s brothers, Porter and William Wallace, bought out his partner to create Hamilton Brothers. The Hamilton Brothers building in Cedar Rapids was very large and technologically advanced for its time. It still exists today in Cedar Rapids. In addition to ruling the farm supply business, John Taylor Hamilton became mayor of Cedar Rapids in 1878, a member of the Lynn County Board of Supervisors in 1882, and in 1883, John Taylor Hamilton became president of the Cedar Rapids Savings Bank. In 1898, he also became president of Merchants National Bank. John Taylor Hamilton was also a Master Scottish Freemason, a Democrat among Republicans, and an Episcopalian. I'm not even done. John Taylor Hamilton was elected representative to the Iowa General Assembly for 3 consecutive terms. In 1890, he was elected to Congress, and in 1914, he ran for governor. He didn't win, but he was running as a Democrat against an incumbent popular Republican governor. When he lost, he just returned to his successful businesses. Let's get back to his baby brother, James Woodbury Hamilton, my great-great-grandfather. His dad was then farming near Blairstown, Iowa, and sent James Woodbury Hamilton to school at the academy there, where he met his future wife, Nina Bell Snow. Nina's parents were from New England. Her father, William Snow, went to California from 1849 to 1851 during the gold rush and found enough gold to buy a government farm in Blairstown, Iowa. William asked his fiancée, Harriet Dwight, to meet him in Ohio to get married, and then they moved to the Iowa farm. Harriet had waited for him for 2 years without any word from California. 8 years after their move to Iowa, pioneer baby Nina was born. James Woodbury Hamilton and Nina moved to Cedar Rapids. James was briefly in business with his brothers before they left in 1890 for Coggan, Iowa, a small town that was just being established from Virgin Woods 25 miles away from Cedar Rapids. James Woodbury Hamilton opened his own farm supply store in Coggan, Hamilton style, and later became postmaster of the town. 5 years after their move to Coggan, tragedy struck. James Woodbury Hamilton fell ill with a mystery illness and died. He was only 36 years old. Nina was left a widow. How to survive? She was appointed postmaster in James Woodbury Hamilton's place, but the pay was only $650 a year. She had a 7-year-old boy, Wallace, my great-grandfather, and a baby girl, Harriet. This photo was taken in 1895, the year of James Woodbury Hamilton's death. Nina's father was still alive, though not living nearby, and she had 3 wealthy brothers-in-law in Cedar Rapids, but no one seems to have helped her much. Except James Woodbury Hamilton's friend, Andrew Clemens, a local carpenter. After 3 years, Nina married him to give her children a father figure. She was married to Clemens for 30 years, compared to her 14 years with James Woodbury Hamilton. But when she died in 1933, she was buried next to James Woodbury Hamilton, with her original married name. I started thinking about the fate of James Woodbury Hamilton. His early death had a big effect on his son Wallace, my great-grandfather. Unlike his wealthy cousins, Wallace didn't go to college. He moved to Cedar Rapids to work in his uncle's bank at age 17. His wife Hazel was the daughter of Coggan pharmacist and town leader Lincoln Grant Hall. Hazel was very well educated, went to a boarding high school and Iowa State University. Wallace worked at his uncle's bank until he died at age 69, having reached the position of branch manager. Wallace and Hazel seem to have had a somewhat troubled marriage with many separations. Hazel spent a good deal of time back in Coggan with her parents and children. Their oldest child had fairly severe mental illness, and their second, my grandfather, struggled with alcoholism and obesity. All this made me wonder, what happened to John Taylor Hamilton and his children? How had things turned out for the congressman with all his success? John Taylor Hamilton married a Canadian woman named Sarah Jones in 1874. They had a long and happy marriage. Their son, James Edward Hamilton, went to university and then eventually took over his father's position as president and chairman of Merchants National Bank. James Edward became wealthier than his father even and lived in a spectacular mansion in Cedar Rapids. James Edward Hamilton had 2 children, Anne Hamilton and John Taylor Hamilton II. John Taylor Hamilton II attended Princeton and then joined the bank business with his father and became even wealthier. He married Consuelo Villa, one of 3 beautiful daughters of Count Alfonso Villa, an Italian nobleman and hedge fund banker. Consuelo grew up in Manhattan and a mansion in Newport, Rhode Island named Fairholme, next door to the Vanderbilt's famous Breakers. Consuelo was a debutante, had her photo taken by Cecil Beaton, and attended finishing schools in Italy. She didn't exactly love life in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Consuelo died in 1973 of lung cancer in Manhattan. A somewhat cold husband and father, John Taylor Hamilton, disputed her will and then remarried and retired to Florida. His Princeton obituary didn't even mention Consuelo. His wealth ended up going to his second wife and stepchildren when he died in 2002, not to his own 3 children with Consuelo. He had an older sister, Anne. The Hamiltons weren't the only bigwigs in town. The Killian family owned a chain of successful department stores in Cedar Rapids. Only the sons got banking jobs, of course. Daughters were raised to be wives and mothers. Anne married a Killian son, Richard, and they had 2 children, Joan and John. From an early age, Joan was a firebrand, a dancer and swimmer. She got the name Dusty after holding onto the tail of a mule on a dusty trail until it stopped running away. When Joan was a teenager, the family moved to Tucson, Arizona, and Joan became an expert horsewoman and rodeo queen. She spoke fluent Spanish and attended the University of Arizona. In 1950, she married a fellow student, James Bartlett. James soon became a lawyer, and they had a son, Steele. That's a family name, remembered James Steele Hamilton, in 1953. Dusty wasn't satisfied at that point just being a wife and a mom. She started modeling and traveled back and forth between Arizona and Los Angeles for gigs. Her career took off, and she was quite in demand. In 1955, Dusty was a stunt rider for the female lead in the movie A Kiss Before Dying. She was separated from James Bartlett and was dating the male lead, Robert Wagner. Then she met this guy, who also had a role in the film.
Like the amount of fan mail an actor receives and the number of popularity polls he wins, the number of fans who write in for a picture like this is another way a studio can spot a rising star, such as Jeffrey Hunter.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks for the kind words, Gig.
Well, there are cold facts to prove them. I think after our audience sees you in the new John Wayne picture, The Searchers, you'll need a couple of caddies just to carry around your press book.
Dusty and Jeff hit it off instantly. She moved to LA with her son and pursued modeling work there. Jeff had been married to actress Barbara Rush previously. They had a son together, but all the time the two spent apart chasing their careers took its toll. They divorced amicably in 1955 after 5 years of marriage. For 2 years, Dusty and Jeff dated. They married in 1957, a young and glamorous model-actor duo on the brink of stardom. They shared a love of adventure and athletics. They flew planes and spearfished and explored undersea caves together. It was quite a life. They were so tan. Each had a son already, and they added 2 more boys to their family. Jeff adopted Dusty's son, Steele. Their son Todd was born in 1959. Scott was born in 1962. They bought an incredible estate on the beach in Pacific Palisades, which recently sold for $24 million. Dusty gave up modeling, and the family traveled around with Jeff as he pursued various film projects. Jeff's first big break was in The Searchers in 1956, a John Ford film with John Wayne and Vera Miles.
Well, it ain't worth the mending. What are you getting so red in the face about? I got brothers, ain't I?
Yeah, well, I ain't one of them.
Now, looky here, Martin Polly. I'm a woman. We women wash and mend your dirty clothes all your lives. When you're little, we even wash you. How you can ever make out to be bashful in front of a woman, I'll never know.
Now, you talk like a feller just might as well run around naked.
Wouldn't bother me none. Sure wouldn't try it in front of Pa, though, if I was you.
But his success in this role didn't translate into getting other big roles.
Oh, I gotta go prettier than you. I gotta go.
Projects fell through, roles went to other actors, and severe illness kept him bedridden for almost a year. Then, in 1961, a starring role dropped into his lap, playing Jesus Christ, no less, in an epic, big-budget MGM film called King of Kings. Some critics enjoyed his performance, but it was marred by controversy, and he was mocked for his youthful blue-eyed good looks. Wags called the movie I Was a Teenage Jesus, even though Jeff Hunter was 33 at the time. He was a pretty good actor, maybe just too pretty to be taken seriously. Similar movies of the time were nominated for Academy Awards, but not King of Kings.
Into your hands I commend my soul.
Jeff kept trying. He had his own short-lived Western TV series called Temple Houston, but problems with the scriptwriters and network piled up, and it was canceled. It was about this time that alcoholism started becoming a problem, not just with Jeff, but maybe with Dusty too. Then, in 1964, Gene Roddenberry sought out Jeff Hunter specifically for the lead role in a new pilot, Star Trek. He wanted Jeff's combination of strength and sensitivity. The producers liked Jeff's performance in the pilot, and the project was greenlighted to film as a series.
You set standards for yourself no one could meet. You treat everyone on board like a human being except yourself. Well, now you're tired and you...
You bet I'm tired. You bet. I'm tired of being responsible for 203 lives, and I'm tired of deciding which mission is too risky and which isn't, and who's going on the landing party and who doesn't, and who lives, and who dies.
According to several sources, Dusty attended contract negotiation meetings with Jeff or even in his place, and things didn't go well. This is not the kind of show Jeff wants to do, and besides, it wouldn't be good for his career. Jeff Hunter is a movie star. She turned down Star Trek on Jeff's behalf. Dusty had reportedly been extremely difficult during filming as well, making numerous unreasonable demands. The big movie roles never came. Jeff's drinking got worse. He and Dusty divorced in 1967. Dusty got a considerable alimony plus the house on the ocean in Pacific Palisades. Jeff took whatever roles were available to pay the bills. With his past success in Western roles, Jeff got offered jobs in budget spaghetti westerns filmed in Italy and Spain. He was very popular in Europe. In February 1969, Jeff suddenly remarried on a whirlwind trip to Mexico with an actress from General Hospital named Emily McLaughlin. A series of bizarre incidents then befell Jeff. At the honeymoon return party, a pan full of hot turkey grease spilled on Jeff's legs and gave him severe third-degree burns. No time to recover from this injury, he had to get on a plane to Madrid to act in the movie Viva America, and tragedy struck again. On set, a stunt was supposed to be rigged to blow out a window away from Jeff. Instead, it blew in on him, burned his face, and gave him a serious head injury. Then, at a stopover in England, a commando friend of Jeff's threw a playful judo move at him and gave him a serious blow to the chin, after which Jeff fell backwards into the wall. While on the plane returning to the U.S., Jeff suddenly became semi-paralyzed and lost the power of speech. He was hospitalized for a couple of weeks on his return to Los Angeles, then released. At the beginning of May 1969, he filmed an episode of a weekly anthology series called Insight and apologized to the director in advance. The director later wrote, "He said he had had an on-set accident while filming and that his memory was impaired. He was concerned he would not be able to remember lines. I assured him that I didn't feel there would be any problem, and there wasn't."
Well, I hope he gets some sympathy. You don't think you should be with it?
Go ahead, do.
John, don't I know you from somewhere?
I don't know. I worked at coffee shops around the campus.
That's it. You're a comic.
Right.
A hippie, huh?
Oh, Rose by any other name.
You know, I think that's unfortunate, that reference to smelling is sweet, as far as hippies are concerned.
I can play some other night.
Sit down, rest, play the game. Ken is only joke. Come on, Ken.
Yeah, what's the matter with you, Ken? Did you catch his act or something?
No, there's nothing personal about it. I just object to the poisoning of young people's minds, that's all.
That's what they said about Socrates.
You know what happened to him, don't you?
On May 27th, Jeff was at home when he blacked out at the top of a stairway. He fell and hit his head on a concrete planter. He was quickly found and rushed to the hospital, but died without regaining consciousness at age 42. Such a tragic end to the Jeff Hunter story. By all accounts, a kind, intelligent person and talented actor, he was plagued by illness, freak accidents, bad scripts, bad timing, bad decisions, and alcoholism. He never fulfilled his potential. What about Joan Hamilton Killian, a.k.a. Dusty Bartlett? She never remarried. She kept her Pacific Palisades estate, swam in the ocean every day, traveled, adventured, raised her kids. Remember Dusty's mom was Ann Hamilton, the heiress daughter of James Edward Hamilton back in Cedar Rapids, Iowa? Dusty inherited bank shares on her mother's death. Dusty needed money to maintain her lifestyle, especially after Jeff's death. Remember that super expensive house in Pacific Palisades? She sued the bank for mismanagement and asked for higher monthly payments from the trust. Between 1967 and 1984, Joan Hunter went through more than $2 million, about $120,000 a year. Half came from the disputed trust and the rest from other sources, including a $480,000 payment she received from a life insurance policy when her ex-husband died in the fall. Even so, she needed to borrow money occasionally to make ends meet for herself and her 3 sons. At one point, her son was representing her in court, and her lawsuit was eventually thrown out, even though the bank had indeed mismanaged her money. She just didn't go about it in the right way, and she spent way too much money in the meantime, something that she had ironically accused Jeff of doing. Dusty died of lung cancer in 2005. Her obituary covers most of what we've already discussed here, but it adds some additional points. Fluent in Spanish, Dusty's passion for adventure guided her, with her children, to Acapulco, Mexico. Following in their mother's delight, her sons would water ski in the wild Pacific after school as a daily family ritual. Upon her return to California, Dusty moved the family to the bluffs of Pacific Palisades, again close to the ocean, where she provided a beautiful home for her family and friends. She often challenged conventional wisdom and pursued enlightened knowledge concerning nutrition, alternative medicine, and sacred spiritual teachings. Dedicated to her gardens and animals, 4 dogs was the average at any one time, she used her keen eye and sense of style to apply aesthetics to all aspects of her life. Dusty always sought to learn, grow, and achieve. While keeping her Christian faith, she explored new philosophies, welcoming ideas that gave her greater understanding about herself and the world around her. She now has been blessed with the universal knowledge bestowed upon her by a greater power, her single drop of life becoming part of the larger ocean. So, in case you've lost track of what this family tree looks like, let's have a little review. In this branch of the family, we have James Woodbury and John Taylor Hamilton, brothers. John Taylor Hamilton's son was James Edward Hamilton, who basically inherited the bank. After that, we have John Taylor Hamilton II, his son, and he married Consuelo Villa, an Italian heiress. His sister Anne moved to Tucson after marrying Richard Killian and had a daughter, Joan Hamilton Killian, who married Jeff Hunter. So I started researching this branch of the family because I thought, their wealth might make them different, enable them to sidestep some of the dysfunction I found in my own branch of the Hamilton family. But in the end, they had all the same stuff. Alcoholism, trauma, mental health issues, accidents, bad parenting, bad decisions. The houses were much fancier, the lifestyle much more glam. There was no daily struggle to put food on the table. John Taylor Hamilton was an incredible success. He was able to pass wealth and opportunity to his son, James Edward Hamilton, and grandson, John Taylor Hamilton II. They lived lives that James Steele Hamilton couldn't have even imagined in his life as a farmer. But they still suffered many of the same problems. All that wealth is gone now. Corporations own the banks in Cedar Rapids. All the mansions were sold off long ago. Everyone left Cedar Rapids, the town once literally built and run by Hamiltons. If there's a moral to this story, besides the fact that wealth doesn't really solve any underlying problems, I think it's that Hamiltons keep on moving. They keep on looking for better situations. They left Scotland, they left Ireland, they left Pennsylvania, they left Illinois, they left Cedar Rapids, and we're still moving as far as I know. So that's the end of this edition of Family Stories. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.